Hello again. The word racism and its derivative racist bids fair to be one of the most commonly used words in Britain and America. It is therefore more than a little unfortunate that so many people don't seem to know what they mean by the term. This misunderstanding is at the root of a lot of unpleasantness in the modern world. I have here the Oxford Dictionary of English, second edition, revised in 2005, which is as good a place as any to begin when considering what we mean by racism. Here is one of the two definitions. Prejudice, discrimination or antagonism directed against someone of a different race. Here's the next definition, the other definition. The belief that members of each race possess characteristics, abilities or qualities specific to that race. Let's think for a moment about those very different meanings of the word racism. Speaking for myself, I don't think that I've ever discriminated against or shown antagonism to anybody based on their ethnicity, race or colour. At least not knowingly. I can't say that I haven't unwittingly behaved in that way or been unaware of it, but to the best of my knowledge and belief, I haven't ever shown discrimination against anyone based on race or colour. I've shared houses with black people, lived next door to them, looked after their children, worked alongside them, given them jobs, many other things. I can't imagine really why I would wish to exclude a black person from anything at all based solely upon his or her race. It would be absurd. The idea that black people should be denied places at schools, universities or in professions because of skin colour is shocking to me. Anybody at all who accuses me of that kind of racism is a fool, and I can't even be bothered to debate the point. It's not worthwhile. What about the second definition though? Here things get a little more complicated because I think it entirely possible that black people, Chinese people and white people tend to possess characteristics, abilities and qualities which differ. Let me give one example, something I've mentioned before. On average, young black men in the United States, where a lot of this research has been done, have levels of testosterone which are about 15% higher than white people. Forget for a moment why this might be, why it is. It just happens to be the case. I give a couple of references for this in the description to this video. High testosterone levels were associated with both success in competitive sports and also with violent and sexual crime. In America, young black men are noted for both those fields. This may be a coincidence, but it's probably not. Okay, this does not mean, of course, that all black men are either rapists, muggers or brilliant athletes. It means there is a statistically higher chance of those things being the case with young men of African origin rather than those of East Asian origin, who tend to have lower levels of testosterone in their bloodstream. This doesn't mean that we should treat any individual black person any differently, course, because very few young men, whether they're black, white or Chinese, are going to be violent criminals any more than only a small minority will become good athletes, runners, basketball players, footballers and so on. It does mean that when we see higher proportions of young black men in prison as compared to those of East Asian origin, we probably don't have to assume that it is a consequence of discrimination or prejudice on the part of the police or courts. This kind of racism, the awareness that Chinese people might lack the necessary enzymes to digest milk or deal with alcohol, along with the realization that young black and white men probably have different levels of certain hormones, is a completely different thing from exercising discrimination or displaying hostility to others based on the colour of their skin or the fact that they have an epicanthic eye fold. What has happened is that the two different kinds of racism have become jumbled up in many people's minds, so that even trying to discuss things like enzymes or hormone levels is enough to cause somebody to shout racism, in the sense that this sort of talk will lead to people being discriminated against or having hostility directed towards them. Just to complicate things further, the American dictionary, Merriam-Webster, are currently reacted to complaints from black people about the definition of racism which is in their dictionary. They'll shortly be including a rather more controversial definition which will say that racism is both prejudice combined with social and institutional power, a system of advantage based on skin colour. Just to make things perfectly clear, I don't think that I've ever consciously excluded or discriminated against anybody because of skin colour. But I do have a strong suspicion that there are innate differences between people of African, Chinese and European origin, and that these are more than skin deep.